Welcome to Warfighter Sanctuary. Here, we talk with local veteran business owners, their military journey, civilian life, their business, and the services they offer.
I am the soldier's lost voice. Come on!
Lock it in and listen up. Here's your host, André Rivera.
Is this what they want?
Welcome back to the Warfighter Sanctuary podcast. I'm your co-host, Justin Martin, and it is that dreaded time for you and I, André. We have to talk about ourselves. And I say that jokingly, but that really is something that is very hard to do sometimes. And, talking about our experiences and what brought us to where we're at. So I'm going to give a little background on you. And, since I've known you for close to 30 years at this point, and
1995.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and know a lot about each other, and brothers from another, in so many different ways. And and I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to kind of speak from a place of admiration, because I've followed you, through that close to 30 years, and what I've seen you achieve is just absolutely remarkable. You picked up six MOSs, was it, in the Marine Corps? You became a jump master. You were in my mind, whenever I'd see you, you were like the recruiting poster Marine. I mean, you did.
Thanks, brother. I never saw myself that way, but I appreciate it.
And I think it's important to point out sometimes that there are those of your friends and peers that saw you that way, and. When you deployed to Iraq, you came back with a Bronze Star with a V for Valor. And that's, something that is earned in the worst way possible. And a lot of people don't understand that and don't recognize that that doesn't mean that you had an outstanding day. That means your actions were outstanding on a day where everything was terrible. And
that's a damn way good to put it, man. Good way to put it. That's spot on.
And
never thought of it exactly like that, but yep.
Yeah, and it just you then you went to work for the government and doing biometrics, something you hadn't done before, and that's important to point out, because that's part of the reason why you founded the the Veterans Resource Network of South Florida, and you are working on creating the Warfighter Sanctuary. Is you came back and it was hard to find work. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the struggles you faced when you came back from Iraq, with all the credentials you already had as a successful private investigator in Miami, and you built yourself a career there, and then where coming back from Iraq led you.
So what inspired when I first returned from Iraq? Now, after Iraq, thanks for mentioning my time in Iraq, but all I thought about was my son. I had a whole shrine of him right by my rack. I slept on a cot for the year that I was there, from 03 to 04, and I had a picture, a bunch of pictures of my son. That was my whole life, and all I want. And as you know, because you knew him since he was a baby, since he was born. And I lived in Miami. He had his family with his mother lived in Tampa, so I wanted to live there. I was a successful private investigator, as you mentioned. I had a K license, which was a firearms instructor. I had an A license for an agency, and I had a C license, private investigator license, and then I had firearms. I had all that stuff. I even did some bodyguard work also, so executive protection. So then when I returned from Iraq, all I wanted to do was be close to my son, and I moved to Tampa. And I figured I'd get work there. Now, down in South Florida, I had made a name for myself, so it was easy for me to get business, and I worked for myself, so I made a lot more money per hour. Whereas I used to, as a private investigator, make $15 to $20 an hour. Now I was making $50 to $100 an hour, depending on who I worked for. So that was great. It was very lucrative in Miami, but I was away from my son. And after returning from Iraq, all I wanted to do was be close to my son. So I went there to look for work, and as you mentioned, it was hard to find. No one cared that I was in the military. No one cared that I just got back from Iraq. Nobody cared. And I had no network there. And I was in a new town, and I knew nobody. And there was nowhere to connect. And I went to the VFW, and I went to all these, and it was just old folks with old connections from 30 years ago. So there was no network there. So that was, as you can see, those were the seeds for what we're doing and sitting here for now. Because I was like, man, we need that. Eventually, what happened was I ended up getting a job overseas in the field, as you mentioned, biometrics forensics. I worked overseas for 3 years. So I went back to Iraq for another 3 years. So I spent a total of just under 4 years in Iraq. And I was doing this for my family back home, so I can save enough to buy a home. My mother had a heart attack at the time, so I ended up buying her a house in Tampa. That was the motivation to buy a home, because I wanted her to get away from Texas, move to Tampa, Florida, and live there. But the whole time I'm in Iraq, so it's counterproductive. So I was trying to do the right thing, but I served my country. I should not have had to have gone back to Iraq, because that ended up ruining my life in a way, because I lost that connection with my son, which is not even repaired to this day. We have that, and I was not there in his formative years because I was trying to build a future for him. It was all about him. That's why I moved to Tampa in the first place. That's why I went to Iraq the second time. And the first time, to some extent, because I really believed in the war at the time. We could talk about that in a different podcast. But I felt like, hey, it's my duty to go overseas so that my son never has to face, for example, what the Israelis just face now. That was my nightmare, that anything happens to my family down here. So I thought always, hey, we go out there so that they don't have to deal with any of that. But so with that said, I was like, well, that's the inspiration I wish I had that network. I wish I had that network when I returned from Iraq. So what can I do to replicate that for others? And that was the groundwork for the idea of a VETRENET. But the idea was a actual physical place, a physical location where folks can come for the podcast, for presentations. And this I briefed at Syracuse University in 2018 when I went there for a veteran entrepreneur program that was like 6 months long. And I briefed it. Everybody loved it. But that's a dream. That's a bridge too far to build a facility right now. I would love to have a facility not centered on alcohol, like we discussed, the Warfighter Sanctuary, centered on business, centered on jiu-jitsu, fitness, jiu-jitsu mats, just weights and Xboxes and maybe espresso, and just a place for veterans to get together. So basically the Warfighter Sanctuary is something that was just a bridge too far. But I told myself, well, maybe I can create a virtual space that replicates the idea or the concept of a Warfighter Sanctuary, but on an online virtual space. And that's what we have here now. It's a directory of veteran-owned and operated businesses. And hopefully not hopefully, as we build and improve upon it, we'll have more capabilities, like a carousel, a calendar of events, and a place where veterans can get together, have discussion, and find their groups, BMX group, motorcycle Harley group, a sparring boxing group, jiu-jitsu group, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's endless. Just a place where veterans can connect with other like-minded veterans, usually for purpose. But like we said, sometimes purpose could be music. It doesn't have to be business. But I think business is the biggest slice out of that pie. That needs addressing.
You mentioned buying a house and having your mother live there, and I remember when that happened and how important that was to you and how much that meant to you to provide a home for your mother, because growing up you guys didn't have a house. You apartment to apartment, sometimes staying with friends when times got tough, and you saw a lot of things during those times that shaped your decision to become a Marine. Well, first of all, to serve in general, and then to eventually decide on the Marine Corps. But your desire was always there based on what you had seen. Like, I know that you tried to join the Marine Corps when you were 14 years old, which most people would think was ridiculous. But you had this, you wanted to protect people. You wanted to protect the world. You also tried to join the Mujahideen and go fight the Russians in Afghanistan, because you in your mind you saw an injustice and you didn't want to witness that anymore. So tell me some more about your childhood and with your mom, and how things growing up in New York City and in New Jersey, how that shaped your decisions.
Well, definitely it was huge, because we grew up really poor. I grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up in Queens with a single mother. She had me when she was 21 years old. She raised me by herself, and I witnessed a murder when I was 9 years old in Brooklyn, Sunset, Brooklyn. I witnessed all kinds of other things, like the friend I played with got raped in the roof where we lived. Then we moved soon after that. But it was always a reason we moved. I moved into like 8 different neighborhoods in New York. Like when I counted, I lost count after 8. I just stopped counting. It was like 8 different neighborhoods growing up. My mother got mugged 3 times on the subway. And that was my first inspiration because I always thought I was safe in New York City because I always saw crowds, lots of people. And, you see the world through a different lens when you're a child. But then I lost my innocence when I saw men get brutalized in the subway during rush hour. And not one person stepped to help him. And I was like, wow. So this whole time I thought I was safe. Me and my mother are not safe, And then even once someone kicked down the door to our house and came in and beat up a woman, in our house, we had nothing to do with anything. It was just, that's a long story. But, there was a lot of situations like that. And my mother, like I mentioned, my mother got mugged 3 times on the subway coming home just from work. And with that, the one time that she would feel safe was when she saw the Guardian Angels, which they're a group of volunteers in New York City that wear red. Yep. They'll go. They're like a good guy gang. They'll go on the trains and then they'll give each other signals. So first, look at how military this is. They're giving each other hand and arm signals that they're all okay. They poke out so they can all see each other. They'll give a hands up. That means all the cars in the train are good to go. And then we're police officers. In New York, police officers, which are different than the police officers we see now that are in cars all the time. Like when I grew up, I always saw police walking around in the subway or in the street, walking a beat, getting to know you. So those are my heroes. As I got older, police, I didn't want to be so much police because they were in the cars. Although I tried, I got my bachelor's degree in law enforcement, in criminal justice. But these were my heroes. I wanted to be a police officer and I wanted to be a veteran. And that was my inspiration, So then, of course, the first taste of veterans is movies, pop culture, Platoon, Full Metal Jacket, all these movies. And the baddest guys were Rambo, Rangers, Green Berets. But growing up, my mother read me all these books on King Arthur, which was my hero. Oh, she also read me Edgar Allan Poe, but that's another story. My mom was a trip. You met her. You and Cornsey are the only. My mother was Muslim, by the way. My mother converted to Islam when she was 12 years old. She was a strict Muslim, wore hijab and everything, and she only hugged. She was not allowed to touch a man, but she hugged 2 men, and she said, because these are your brothers. There were 2 Marines, Cornsey, Donnie Cornsey, and you. So pop culture is what first gave me the interest. And then reading about knights, I was fascinated with the knights, the chivalry, the honor, all of that, because that was the complete opposite of what I experienced in New York. That was all dishonor. It was all jumping people and doing horrible things to people. So I was like, hey, I want to be the opposite of that. As a kid, you idealize it, you romanticize it, but it doesn't matter because I feel like just like stories in the Bible, parables, it tells you this is what should be. It idealizes what should be. This is how men should be. Yeah, there might be some stories that people wrote, but they're showing you, they're demonstrating values. And that's, I guess, what my mother was trying to teach me with these books that she would read to me and give me. And those were my inspiration for that. So then I wanted to be a Ranger or Green Beret, but then I saw, of course, that they don't get swords. And I saw those commercials for the Marine Corps in the 1980s. I was like, oh my God, these guys get armor, they get swords, they get horses, they fight wizards. You see those ridiculous commercials? I was like, they're fighting wizards. There's Fireball, the guy fights a dragon. How about when he fights a monster? He says, no, it's not a dragon, it's a magma monster. It is. And I go, yeah, it was. It's like, what the hell? What is he? What is even that? But it's for young boys. I mean, they snagged all the nerds. I know I'm the biggest nerd, and they snagged me hook, line, and sinker. And I wanted to be a Marine more than anything. So I tried to join the Marine Corps. Got a little letter here. This is a letter from the Marine Corps, as you can see, and it says, Dear Mr. Rivera, in Perth Amboy, New Jersey. I lived in Perth Amboy, New Jersey at the time. We appreciate your interest in the Marine Corps. However, since you are 14, you won't be eligible to be a Marine until you reach 17. But as our way of showing appreciation for your interest, we are enclosing a special Marine memento, and that was a iron-on, which I wore on a white shirt until that iron-on just became flecks like nothing. It was just a white shirt with little flecks. I want to give you this advice. The Marine Corps wants you to stay in school and get your diploma. The more education you have, the more valuable you will be to yourself and to the Marines. Then when you have graduated, find out about the special advantages of Marine Corps officers. Marine Corps offers. The technical, they didn't even try to make me an officer. Because they said a high school. The technical training, the leadership training, and most important, the pride belonging to an elite organization. Elite. Yeah. Thanks again for your interest in the Corps. That's great. Thank you, Colonel Canty. Yep.
So an interesting segue with that, with the Marine Corps, is that when did you actually finally join the Marine Corps?
23.
Yeah. And we were talking about that the other day. You were talking about your you were kind of lost, and
Yeah.
you'd lost your way. And I think it was your grandmother.
My grandma, yeah. So I graduated with my associate's degree.
Mhm.
I just had crashed my Plymouth Duster, which I look back, I hated the car back then. Now I look back and go, oh, I love that car. The car's so awesome. But I had crashed it, didn't have a tire. I was dating some girl, but couldn't see her because my car was broken. We didn't have Uber. We didn't have any of that back then. So I was just stuck like Chuck.
Mhm.
So I was like in a very frustrating part of my life. And I remember getting home and I just graduated. And it was a pain in the neck 'cause I had to take buses and everything near the end.
Mhm.
And then I go, Grandma, look, I got my degree. And then she goes, eso no significará. Tiene que cambiar tu carácter, which translates to, that doesn't mean anything. You need to change your character. And I was like, and at the time it was 90s. It was like 93, 92. South Beach was at its freaking pinnacle of being awesome. Club Velvet, Rebar, Cameos, like all the great bars. And the people were cooler back then, you know. And then when she told me that, I was like, I felt like I was lost. I went, picked up the phone, called the recruiter. And then the recruiter's like, yeah, just come by whenever. And I was like, well, I crashed my car. So, okay, next time I get a ride, I'll go ahead and I'll call you. He's like, I'm on my way. Gunny Green, wherever you are.
Man, those guys were really here. I mean, it's amazing.
Gunny Green was there. He was like, he showed up like a ninja. I'm like, holy shit. How'd you get here so fast? Like a cartoon, like a dang cartoon. And he showed up, picked me up. And I was a mess back then. I had a leather jacket. It's Miami, dude. I got a leather brown jacket. Like I thought it was Fonzie. Like not the black jacket. I got a leather brown jacket.
Yeah.
I'm smoking Lucky Strikes. I got a silver hoop earring. He picks me up, we get in his car, he drives me. He's like, hey man, if you join the Marine Corps, you can't wear earrings. When I look at him, I take my earring off and I chuck it out the window. He looks at me and he goes, you crazy, man. He goes, you're crazy, man. He goes, you're perfect. You love the Corps. I'll never forget that shit.
Amazing.
And then that was it. I signed up and then I took off to the Marine Corps. And my first MOS was embarkation, 0431, which nobody understands what that is. But it's basically logistics, making sure we have enough beans, bullets, bandages, and something else, but I don't even remember because I was never really great at that job. No, actually, I was really good when I first did. I was really good. Actually, we passed our first unit inspection because of me, and that was my first MOS. But then I started volunteering for all the JRTCs. That's where I met you, and that's where all the grunts went and everybody went. But people hated going to that crap, and we would have like 2 or 3 evolutions of that every year, and they would always have holes for the teams. They would have the forward teams, which are the ones that
to go to every one we could. Yeah.
We were nuts. So normal people don't like to go to these things because it's 2 or 3 weeks of no shower. You're in the field, you're just miserable. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that because I was an embark guy. I was a logistics guy. I was like, I want to do the cool shit. So I went to the first one. I was like, this is why I joined the Marine Corps. I'm in the reserve, so I'm going to college and I'm getting to do these. And since I'm in college, I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to do 3 of those. So I do them back to back to back to back. And after a while, they didn't realize I was that guy. We got a new XO in, new lieutenant. And they're like, hey, put him with Corporal Rivera. Corporal Rivera knows everything about the analytical mission. And then they had me on the roster and it said 0431. They're like, what in the hell is a 0431? Like, embarkation. Like, what the hell is that? I'm like, logistics. You're a supply guy. I go, no, it's not supply. We just keep track of supply.
Well, you're also responsible for getting it to point A to point B. So
we're coordinating. We're coordinating everything. And people think that we're supposed to be supply. I'm like, no, supply has their supply guys that store supply. I just go to make them accountable for what they're storing, and make every section accountable for what they're doing. And I was good at it, but I hated it. I like this mission. So finally, we got to send this guy to the school. And then they sent me to the 08 school. And then from there, but I also it was a PMI. I went to PMI school in 97. So I became a firearms instructor in the Marine Corps, which was great. And that's good for young service members to do that because as a corporal, I'm in a leadership position. Think about that. Because now I'm the firearms instructor. So I get officers and I'm teaching them how to shoot. How does that affect me? It does affect me. It's unwritten, but when they see me later, they respect me. And these officers that didn't know me now know me because I'm the instructor, because I'm the firearm. So I think, and I guess the purpose of talking about that is that, when you're a young veteran, they tell you don't volunteer for stuff. I'm the opposite of that. I'm like, volunteer for everything. Life is an experience. That's why I had 6 MOSs, like you mentioned. I had 6 different jobs because I was a Air Force load planner. Who wants to be an Air Force load planner? Ooh. Because then I had to do logistics. I'm like, oh, I get to learn how to load a C-130, the weights and the ammo. I thought that was fascinating. And it was just cool to have another skill set. I thought that's what it was all about. So I had 6 jobs. I was a recruiter. I was some of these didn't count as MOSs. Like Jump Master didn't count as an MOS because the Marine Corps, but in the Army it does.
Yeah.
Marine Corps were just stupid sometimes, but because that's definitely an MOS. Being a Jump Master is tough. That was the toughest school I went through. So the Jump Master, paratroopers, I did several things in the Marine Corps. But my inspiration was to be a Marine because, yeah, like you said, I wanted to be a protector, and you know, I'm not helping veterans now because I'm a veteran. They were my heroes. Veterans were my heroes when I was a child. Now they're my peers. Now they're my respected, you know, folks that I could work with and my best friends. So it's an honor to do this, to work with you, to work on this podcast, to bring more awareness to what we're doing, that, hey, we're capable. Veterans have incredible integrity, incredible work ethic, incredible determination, self-reliance, and we're the perfect people to hire in any industry. You know, and we deserve it. We deserve a shot. And that's the great thing about this. We're not asking for money. We're not asking for donations. We're saying, hey, next time you hire an inspector, next time you hire, just give this guy a shot, you know.
Something I want to go back and touch on real quick, and this can be a subject for a later podcast.
Sure.
But you know, we can expand on our thoughts on this, but that moment when your grandmother basically called you to the mat like that,
yeah,
it changed the course of your life for the better.
It did.
And it may have been a blow at that point.
Yeah.
But, you know, we've talked about this, you know, off the record, just, you know, you've never once improved by somebody just placating you.
Yes.
You've only ever improved by somebody
calling you out.
Yeah. And it doesn't always have to be, you know, harsh, brutal.
She was Asian. She's like Asian. She's tough.
Yeah, I mean,
she's tough as nails.
That's fine, but you know, it doesn't have to be degrading. And I don't think it was degrading. I think she was making a point that you need to step up and you know.
There's more to life than just getting a college degree. Is what she was telling me. She's like, you need to build your character. She didn't tell me to join the Marine Corps.
Yeah,
but when she told me that, it was like, because you remember the Flintstones? Like a little dude came up here, like, hey man, it was like I was just compelled. Juddy, I went over to the phone. I picked up the phone. I was like 1-800 Marine Corps. I was like, yo, I'm ready. And they picked my ass up, and man, it was within weeks I was already like getting in the zone of going. And I remember being scared now because they give you that little booklet to remember your general orders. And I was like reading that shit every day. I was the rank structure. I was like, the rank. Oh my god, because it has all the rank, the Navy rank, and everything. You had to remember all that shit. Man, I was freaking out. But I was 23. Yeah, so that was a big advantage too. Because when I got in there, I was a little older than most folks, and you know, yeah. But I was lost at that time frame in my life. You know, like you said, I almost joined the Mujahideen. I have that letter too. So I almost joined the Mujahideen to fight the Russians. I wanted to, when I was 17. Thank God I didn't do that because I didn't know they were going to do 9/11 10 years later. Because that was, what year was that? That was 1988. So yeah, so like 12, 13 years later, you know, which was a subject for my fictional book. In my fictional book, I go over there. And then I have a compelling, what do I do now?
You had mentioned that for a time there in Anglico, everybody would they would send everybody to Corporal Rivera because he knew everything about the Anglico mission. So since our motto is simply forgot us because we don't do any PR, what is the Anglico mission?
You know, we have the worst marketing because you always hear about recon. Like recon kicks butt. And recon is awesome. Okay, recon is awesome. I love my recon Marines. But man, we have bad marketing because if people knew our mission, I think people would talk about Anglico more often. And that's why our motto is simply forgot us. Well, that was nice. Simply forgot us because people forget what the Anglico mission is. And we have a very cool mission because we are recon. A matter of fact, that is, let me see, I got enough battery. That is our emblem. That is our map symbol. And the map symbol, if you notice, it has a recon emblem, which is a line across it. It has the cannonball for artillery. It has the fixed wings for the wings. And it has the naval, the anchor. So we are a combination of everything. We do so much. And simply forgot us. And so what is our mission? So in Iraq, our mission was to support fires, to support coalition fires. So, for example, the Polish, they can't call airstrikes because they don't have aircraft. And we can't trust them because it's an international incident. Not because we don't trust them. We do trust them, but still, they haven't been trained to our standards on how to control airstrikes, close air support. So they'll send us. And then by sending an Anglico team, now either those Polish, those Ukrainians, those Spanish, now have the same capability. You're good to go. They still have the same the same capability. They still have airstrikes, naval gunfire, and artillery. So we do all three: artillery, naval gunfire, and I'm talking to you, but you know this because you were in our unit too. So that was our mission. And when we went to these GRTCs, we're in 4-man teams, snooping and pooping, calling airstrikes, and we did all this. And they trained us for 10 years on those tactics to attack and fight Russians. We go to Iraq. Now we're riding in those same BTRs that we trained to destroy, and we're along with the Ukrainians. So yeah, it was a little surreal to our unit. Very interesting. Yeah. And we worked alongside Green Berets in Iraq. Matter of fact, we worked with Green Berets, we worked with Special Operations, and as a result, in that case, just by being connected with the Green Berets, we got the great opportunity of having to call our AC-130 gunships, which are not organic to Marine Corps units. So they brought that to the fight, but we got to control it, which is a very unique situation, because I don't think there's very many Marines in Iraq that called AC-130 gunships on targets.
Well, and
our team got to do that.
Any time spent as in your youth, looking at the military and wanting to join the military and being enamored with all the equipment and all the stuff, at some point or another, you've heard of an AC-130 gunship, and you're like, hell yeah! And you get to control it. And Green Berets, it was an honor to work amongst them, and it was more of an honor to work amongst them and them living up to the hype. Green Berets were professional, Rangers were professional. And I'm not one of these Marines that goes out and talks trash about the other branches, because I've worked with them and they're professionals. They're good to go. 82nd, even their grunt forces, 101st, all of the guys are good people. I met some great people in my career. Oh, I also worked, like you said, 10 years after the military. I worked when I went back to Iraq that we mentioned, I worked for another almost a decade in biometrics forensics. I worked at the U.S. Army Intelligence Center. I worked at Central Command, and I worked at Special Operations Command in Tampa. So I got to see a cross-section of the military that most people don't get to see. Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of people don't understand me. They're like, oh, why? He got out of the Marine Corps in 2006. Why is he still so motivated? I'm like, no, I didn't. I got out in 2014. I got into the military in 1995, and I got out in 2014. And so it's a big part of my life. So I'm going to take a moment to jump in here because,
sure,
like I said in the beginning, sometimes talking about ourselves is like the worst thing imaginable.
Yeah, it is.
And
it's tough.
The moments, the past few minutes here where you have talked about yourself or any of the things that you've done, it's always been in the context of how it relates to VETRENET, Warfighter Sanctuary, and what your mission is with them to try to connect veterans, help veterans, and help them achieve. But going back a little bit, I do want to touch on how in Anglico. At the time, we worked with a lot. We didn't really work with Marines that often. We worked with a lot of Army, 82nd Airborne 101st, sometimes National Guard units, Green Beret. Rangers. There was a ton of different units. I worked with the British 1st Para Group.
Yeah, the Gurkhas. Rangers were tough, man. I didn't like humping with the Rangers, and they're like an optical illusion because they're like these skinny little dudes that carry like 3 times their weight.
Yeah. But I think what an interesting story is how the first GRTC where we met, your MOS was still technically MBART, and you really hadn't cross trained yet in the Anglico mission. And you were a Lance Corporal then?
Lance Corporal.
And you ended up leading a company of Army infantry company through the freaking woods.
You were there
in Fort Polk, Louisiana.
You can't lie about this.
They all thought you were. They
thought I was badass.
They thought you were like
I played the role.
Delta Force or some shit. It was amazing.
It was my first acting role. I can't believe you remember that. I forgot all about that. That's true. That was badass.
That was the greatest case of fake it till you make it there was, because
I got killed though. I got killed. I was the first guy to die.
Their officers kept coming to you. So what do you think, Lance Corporal Rivera? You're like, yeah, sure, we're gonna go that way.
We're going this way. I know where we're going. You know where we're going? Yes. I had no clue. I just kept staring at the map. And I kept looking really cool. I was like, okay, that scene in Tour of Duty, that show I used to go up to, all right, they go like this. Yeah. Look at the map. We're going this way. Follow me. Then we got in an ambush and I got killed. I was like the first one to die. But yeah, so it was I was so confident and I had my paint so badass.
Oh yeah, you had the best paint.
I had the best. Ever. And then I looked, and then I had all my shit, my camouflage. So then the officers were like, "Hey, you guys are the Anglico guys," because they know we're special operations capable.
Yeah,
they just don't know what we are. We're not as high speed as recon. but we're high speed. And they're like, okay, so can you look? Can you know patrolling? I'm like, yeah, of course, which I did, but I can't patrol a company. And they're like, okay, you're gonna lead this company. I was like, huh? It was like 3 platoons. 3 platoons, right? It was 3 platoons. It looked like I remember imagining the movie Platoon when they're like going through and then I look back and I just see like 100 people. I'm like, holy shit! Yikes!
I do want to point something out. Anglico technically, and I'm not doing this to insult recon, but standard recon, battalion recon is really not that intense, but it's a different mission. We're third echelon reconnaissance element, but our main focus is acquiring targets and being a force multiplier. So different mission.
Totally different mission.
We can do a lot more destruction and devastation than your average battalion recon unit can do. But we used to be force recon, and what is it now? It's MARSOC. Those guys are intense.
Yeah,
that's high speed there.
And the Raiders. There's a bunch of different units that came out after us. But it's important, and we'll get into that. I can sit here and talk about that because we got witnesses that Anglico, 4th Anglico more specifically, had a lot to do with the beginnings of MARSOC, and were never even mentioned. Yeah, and I know that one. I think it was the first. But man, it's hard not to tell stories. Yeah. But we'll get into that. I'll get into that.
So we talked about what led you to become a Marine and what your inspiration was behind that, and we mentioned pop culture a little bit too, because I was there too at the same time. We're almost the same age. Yeah. During the 80s when we grew up, every TV show, every movie was Vietnam vets and this and that, and
everything.
Magnum PI, 18. I loved it. 18. And you and I both grew up, kind of idolizing that, and just like, wow, and
romanticizing it, idolizing it.
Yeah,
it was a masculine. It's a little different now, though.
Yeah, it's a little, but that was a big thing in our lives. Yeah, and so you did it. You became that thing you wanted to be as a child. And we all have dreams. I want to be a police officer. I want to be a fireman. I want to be this. I want to be that. Whatever it is. I want to be an astronaut. But that was clear cut for you, and it wasn't the direct path that you had imagined, but it led you down a very interesting life. I mean, we always talk about our stories are a lot better than most everybody else's we know.
Yeah, no, it's true. We had some crazy stories,
but
I got to meet all kinds of people. I worked for General Mattis, Admiral McCraven. He's the brains behind the Osama raid. Yeah, these were our boss. These were people that were in boss, not directly above me, but they were in my chain of command. My leaders briefed them. I can say that, And I was at the J3, at the J2. Like I lived an incredible career, and I got to meet all kinds of people. The president, the first chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, went to his private party. Like adventures that I would have never had transpired or happened. Doors opened up for me in the military. It was great, and for a lot of us, and that's why I feel like we owe it to veterans. Not having to deal with all this red tape when you get out of the military, try to make that transition a little easier. Because I read that, we're the elders. We can talk about that. We're the elders. We're the elders of the community. I don't want to feel like an elder, but I am. And when these young kids come out in their 20s, and they want to start a business, or they don't know what to do with the rest of their lives, they have someone that they can talk to, or they have not just a one person. And that's the other thing, like I don't have the time for one person to help them, but as a community, we can help that one person. Yeah. You know what I mean? I have a slave. I'll give him 10 minutes of my time. You give him 15. You give him 2 hours. As a community, we can get that veteran squared away.
Now, what about some of the things that, after you're, stop working in biometrics with the government and you found yourself at a major crossroads, you went back and got your MBA. You did things to try to better yourself, but you hit a really low point with life. You were just kind of lost in a lot of things that happened. Tell me how that shaped this whole idea for Warfighter Sanctuary and for VETRENET.
Yeah, absolutely, Justin. So in the beginning, as I told you, I had to go to Iraq because I went to Tampa and I couldn't find private investigation contracts. All my contacts were down in Miami. So that forced me to go to Iraq. So that was the first stage. But then right after that, life was great because I was making almost $200,000 a year. Then even when I got back to the States, I was making over 100 and living a great life, bought a home, everything's great. So there was a flash to bang there, meaning, you know, it didn't affect me immediately. That transition, for a few months when I first got back, like I told you, I had struggled in Tampa, but then I got that job in overseas. So I went right back making that good money. So life was good. Purpose, you talk about purpose, working in the field of biometrics forensics and anti-terrorism, working with it in the intelligence community, in the IC, you know, briefing the Pentagon every 2 weeks. I started a organization within, even though CENTCOM's AO, area of operation, is only the Arabian Peninsula, the Levant, you know, since you know, that's our AO, we had access to the entire coalition because England, for example, Norway, they're in Iraq. So as a result, we had a village, a coalition village of all those countries. So this was kind of strange now because our AO is only the Arab countries, most of the Arab countries, but we have access to all those countries. So I opened it up for sharing biometrics. So like, this is a great opportunity to start talking to these people about sharing biometrics. Like baseball cards, you got bad guys, we got bad guys. Let's share them, you know? So I started this. Like this opened up so many different things. I had purpose every morning. I loved my job and I was very passionate about it. A little too passionate, you know. I got into a lot of unnecessary arguments with people. A lot of people that didn't like me in DC because I always looked for the warfighter's interest because I always looked at it from the perspective of a guy on the ground. And sometimes they were doing things that were not disingenuous to win their contracts, you know.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as making money because when you're in the military, these other opposing contracts, it's about making money, but it's also about it. Those organizations within the military growing and they're competing against you. Like we're fingerprints, there's something else, and but we're both fighting for the same color of money. So things like that happen, and I would have to advocate for biometrics because I think it's fantastic, but that's for another time. So with that said, now when I left that field of forensics and biometrics, I went back, got my degree in business, and I wanted to start some kind of business. My first business was like, hey, I want to do something that I love to do now. I'm no longer working for the government, but I want to do something that I find purpose in and enjoyment. Well, I was a firearms instructor, and I'm all about protection and all about security. So I came up with a business idea where I train folks to protect their house in their home, give them a layout of their home, give them an exit plan, give them a rally point, give them instructions, how to communicate with their kids. Because, hey, you pull out a gun, someone breaks in your house, you might shoot your own family. You know, things that they didn't even consider, you know. What's the rally point? Where do you escape from? Where do you go to? Where, you know, do you have a bug out bag with a radio? What do you have? So that kind of concept. I love that idea, and I still train my family, and I'm sure you do too, but most people don't. What I found was great business idea, good initiative, bad judgment. People don't care. They just want to carry a firearm and feel cool. Go to a range and shoot at paper targets. Mine was with airsoft. I had a whole program where we have modular walls. I wanted to do CQB. People are not into that. They just want to have a firearm. If they can shoot in the center, then they feel safe. Although in real life, that means nothing. That means nothing if you can shoot the center. Under ideal conditions, that's great, but you got to do it under stress. Someone shooting back at you changes everything. So I was a very proponent of airsoft. And I was an instructor up in Volusia County for a while too. So while I was trying to determine what my business was, I was learning that wasn't a good business idea. And then I fell into real estate because a childhood friend of mine was in real estate. And you mentioned this earlier, you know, I made it into a purpose. You know, I never saw myself as a salesman, but then I go, wait a minute. When I was talking to the Pentagon and briefing generals and telling them, hey, you should use this $100 million program, you should probably use this $10 million program, and here's why, and then show the data and make slides and come up with something compelling to explain to them why. I go, well, that's not sales. I don't know what you call that, but I'm good at that. I'm good at that. So I use those skill sets, and I use it in real estate. And in real estate, I look at it as a purpose because I'm helping these people attain the American dream, you know, and I look at it with that same passion. And I try to help them as I wasn't helped, because when I bought my home, you mentioned I bought my home the first time I had money. You know, me and my mother growing up renting in New York in bad neighborhoods. First thing I did was I bought a home for my mom and me. And my real estate agent told me not to use the VA loan. He totally screwed me. I won't get into the whole thing, but that was also an inspiration. Like, hey, I want to be the opposite of that guy. I want to be able to guide people. And mostly I help veterans, but I help everybody. That's it. And I found purpose in that. Because now I look at it as like, no, I'm helping a family find the American dream, you know? And that's what I'm trying to give to other veterans. Like, man, after the military, there's all sorts of stuff you can do. It's all mindset and finding it. And one great way to expedite finding it is having access to a network where you can ask these people that already have gone through it. Hey, what was your experience? How do you like it now? Do you hate it? Or do you like it? What would you do differently? You know, having that tribe to turn to is so critical. And that's why we're doing this.
Outstanding. And just so people watching know, when André talks about not being much of a salesperson, and it is actually it's amazing but kind of funny in the same respect. Like, I've been to a couple open houses that he's done, and there's charts and graphs and and different metrics and stuff all printed out on easels. It's amazing. Any other real estate agent is going to walk in and be like, "What?"
Yeah,
that's all.
But it is a lot of work. But I want it to be an experience. I know a lot of these people, a lot of people that are buyers and sellers, they don't really know the process, and it's almost like they're faking it. Mm-hmm. And you can see right through it. So I'd rather meet them halfway and be like, "Hey guys, here's all these charts. This explains the market. This explains what's going on. Interest rates. I have charts for all across. If you're buying a home at 500,000, at 6%, at 8%, this is what it's going to look like." Then explaining what's going on in the market today. And I have all these graphs and pictures, and I can explain it. So when people come, they're getting educated also. Mm-hmm. Because again, it goes back to, hey, even if I don't sell you a home, you're getting educated. I'm helping in one way. I'm bringing value to you. Now, from a business standpoint, to be selfish, because I'm not here just doing this all just to be nice, but also they can see me as the expert. And this is an opportunity for me to demonstrate my expertise. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I'm not just talk. I don't just take a picture and look really good on pictures, but hey, man, you see all this stuff? I can talk to it because I really know this stuff. This is my life. I wake up every morning and I'm reading about real estate and I love it. I'm a mutant. I enjoy this stuff. I'm looking at the markets. I'm figuring out what's good. And here, this is my way of trying to demonstrate. That's why I do these videos on the different neighborhoods. Like, I'm trying to show people like, hey, man, I'm the expert in these neighborhoods. I'm bringing value to you. But hey, just keep me in mind if you ever plan on moving somewhere. Trust me, I'm going to find out. And if I haven't been to that neighborhood yet, you best know I'm going to infiltrate and learn everything about that neighborhood, and I'm going to let you know.
Back to the reconnaissance element.
Reconnaissance of agriculture, exactly. And I was a private investigator for 6 years. But that's the point of veterans bringing a little bit more. Because I'm just one example of many. There's so many veterans there that are doing above and beyond because they're taking what they do very seriously. So Justin, we've heard about me. We've heard about the Warfighter Sanctuary and Veterans Resource Network. So let's talk a little bit about you. Tell me a little bit about your background. I think you mentioned that you were in 0311. You were infantry earlier. Talk about, your Harley, talk about your bands, your music, your inspiration, and why and what your capacity is here at Veterans Resource Network, at the 501c3, and in the podcast.
So I graduated high school in 1991. The Gulf War was going on in my senior year of high school. And I was already, the beginning of my senior year, as the war was going on, I was already talking to the recruiter. I was like, I'm doing this, I'm going. And, I'd always had it in my mind, or at least during the latter part of my high school years, that I was going to join, and I was going to join the Marines. There was no question. And I'll get into in a minute some of the things I learned about that mindset later on. Different path that led me instead of going active duty, I ended up joining the Marine Corps Reserves because I think when I graduated, I was still 17 years old. So I legally couldn't go without parent or guardian's signature. And I was living with my mom, but my dad had legal custody. My parents had been split up since I was 6 months, something like that, or before I was a year old. So my father, who was adopted, was drafted during Vietnam, but did not deploy. He stayed stateside and worked as a clerk. And in his mind, he was looking after me, and he said, "No, I'm not signing the papers. You're going to go to college." And so I applied, and I got a full ride to a school in upstate New York called the College of St. Rose. And there was some other stuff in that too, because my father didn't have a great life, and the man's got a genius level IQ, and he's absolutely brilliant. You've met him, And he was told when he was young, when he asked for $75 to enroll in community college, my grandfather told him he's not worth it. Mm-hmm. So I think in his mind, he didn't want to deny me any opportunities that he was denied earlier in his life. So I ended up joining the Marine Corps Reserve. As soon as I turned 18, I was like, "Screw you, Dad, I'm going to do it anyways." So I joined up, and right away I was like, I want to be on the ground, infantry. I want to be where the fight is. And so that made the recruiter really happy.
Yeah, of course.
Because you have to do a lot of work there. So yeah, I ended up joining Fox 225 in Albany, New York, infantry unit up there, specialized in Arctic infantry. So that was fun.
Miserable.
Yeah. And you'd mentioned that kind of earlier in some of the stuff, talking about that mindset and what that mindset brings to the table. And literally, it just means that I'm used to being in situations where you're absolutely uncomfortable all the time.
Cold is miserable.
Yeah, I mean, between the cold, the heat, the sleeping on the ground, the just being dirty, there's no comfort whatsoever.
The only easy day was yesterday.
Yeah, and so I did that. I was there for 2 years in that unit, and then decided I was living in upstate New York at the time. That's where I went to finished high school and college. I did a couple of years of college, and after I got kicked out of college because I didn't go in with the greatest plan, I chose a school that had a 5-to-1 female-male ratio. So let's just say that studying was not my.
What were you majoring in?
My intent was to go for music education,
Okay.
but I needed to audition, and I needed to get some more background in music theory to do that, in performance, and my instrument was guitar. And let's just say that I never did that. I screwed up. I got sucked into partying and doing stupid things, and
then joined a bunch of bands.
Yeah, stuff like that. And basically, I got asked politely not to come back. And so then I
at least they were polite about it.
Yeah, at least they were polite. So I decided to move back to Florida, move back home, be back around my dad, my brother, and other family, my sister, and joined Fourth Anglo, and that's not too long after is when you and I met. Yeah. And during that JRTC, and one of the things that kind of is in line with the purpose of VETRENET and the Warfighter Sanctuary is that I was lost for a really long time. I was working for my dad for a little while, doing concrete and soil testing and drilling holes on a drill rig, to test soil and just, backbreaking work. And, then I bounced around to just menial job after menial job. And finally, it was actually another Marine from Fourth Anglo that just approached me and said, "Hey, man, I've seen you work. You're a hard worker. Why don't you come work for me?" And I was like, "What do you do?" He goes, "I run the sales and installation shop for the car stereo department in Circuit City." I was like, whatever.
What was his name?
It was Mike.
Just see if I remember it.
I can't remember. He was in Motor T. He was a little short little ginger guy. God, I can't remember his last name though. It's been so many years, and I've taken so many blows to the head. But
those are good times, man.
Yeah,
the '90s were good. Mid mid to late '90s were good times.
It just was one of those chance things that happened. So it's by accident. What we're trying to do on purpose is what happened.
Yeah.
And he suggested this job. I was like indifferent about it. And then I was doing fire sprinkler work at the time. It was terrible. And I got pissed off at my foreman one day. And so I left work and I called him up and asked if he still was looking for somebody, and started there. Within a few months, I was assistant manager and then did stuff there. And it led me down a 27, almost 28-year path. I got into wholesale distribution. I got into work as a manufacturer's rep for car audio and home audio products and consumer electronics, and have been doing that
through a network.
Yeah,
we didn't have a name for it back then, but now we call it VETRENET. But basically, it's just the network of veterans, man. He saw you working hard. He knew he can count on you, and he's like, "Hey, if I'm going to hire anybody, let me give you this guy a shot first."
Yeah, and again, it was what we're trying to do on purpose happened on accident.
Exactly.
And we've talked to other people that's kind of happened where, a chance meeting, they were led down a certain path. And that's kind of what happened there. And it gave me some direction and, gave me some stability for the first time ever in my life. and for a long time, I was able to carve out a pretty decent life doing that, and it allowed
Well,
me.
the world's changed too,
Yeah.
as far as the industry goes, but it held you well for a long time.
And it allowed me to experience a lot of different things. I did some travel for a little while. I
Moved out of state.
Moved out of state. I enjoy riding motorcycles, and I love motorcycles in general, but I'm really partial to Harleys, and I've had a couple over the years, and was able to do that, and then also pursue my side passion, which is being a professional guitar player, musician, and being able to perform and have nice equipment and pursue that dream, and more as a dream to fill that hole in my soul, not my financial hole necessarily.
Yeah.
Because that's one of it's like being a Marine. It's just who you are. Being a musician is just who I am. Being a biker,
but it's part of your purpose.
Yeah.
It's part of your purpose, and it'd probably be good to find other veterans that are also musicians.
Yeah, and
that's what this is about, also, because
exactly.
it doesn't have to be business, and that's I guess the point I'm making is like finding purpose doesn't necessarily have to be business, because you could be wealthy and be missing something in your life and be like, man, I wish I would have pursued that music, and then you join VETRENET and you go, hey man, that guy, I play bass. I heard Juddy, he's freaking awesome on guitar. And he's got a band. Maybe you can use a bassist, and you can. I'm pretty sure. I think you can. And there you go. And that's the whole thing. We want to replicate that for other folks.
And I'll tell you. I've performed in front of large crowds, and I've also been paid to sit in a recording studio and provide guitar tracks and even some songwriting. But when you talk about maybe that part is missing, I'll tell you that sometimes just being in a rehearsal. Doesn't have to be live on stage. Sometimes it's just the rehearsal with just the musicians, and there are moments that happen and things that are just so amazing that it takes you to another place and makes you whole, and to be able to help somebody that has a passion for music like that would be it's great to do that, and and being able to do that maybe for some veterans, or doing other things for some veterans too. And just my association with this, and since you came up with this concept and put it in motion, which is the hardest thing, has been rewarding on so many levels. And we mentioned earlier, when we were talking about the purpose, we were talking about some of the measurable success, and we mentioned that the one veteran that through the contact with us, and we had introduced them to certain other people, found new purpose and stuff like that. And I don't know how it was for you, but the sense of the feeling that provided.
Absolutely. And it's real.
Transformative.
It wasn't like BS. You know what I mean? Like,
it was completely
there's
transformative.
There's a lot of BS ones out there, but that one's like a real one, because we saw it. We're still seeing it. It was like, wow, that person's doing great.
Yeah.
That person's doing great, and that person's doing great as a direct result of us, not us specifically, but just us being able to listen, to be there as a tribe, and then guide them in the right direction. Where, like we said, I can't be there the whole time. You can't be there but as a community, we can be there all the time for our veterans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Here in South Florida, 100%.
And it radiated up into other aspects too. As you know, that just basically one day your suggestion of going to the gym, getting back into it, helped spark an 80-pound weight loss with me and getting back into shape, because I was miserable, and I'm still in pain, but nowhere near what I was, and the negative self-image of that too, knowing that I used to be all these things. I used to be a football player. I used to be, infantry, Marine. I skateboarded, snowboarded, mountain biked. I did all these
X Games.
Yeah,
you were the '90s X Games guy. You were that guy.
I was into so much, so athletic, and then just end up 325 pounds and miserable and in pain and hardly able to do anything. And being that one person that, whenever you're with a group of friends and we're at an event where there's a lot of walking, they got to keep looking back going, "You okay, man?" And how dejecting that is every time.
When you used to be a grunt leading from the front.
Yeah, no kidding.
No, I know.
And so, that was a big had a big impact on my life. And then being able to get involved with other veterans and help, and actually just reconnecting to the community, because that other than you, for a long time, I was not really in contact with a whole lot of.
But most aren't.
Yeah.
The thing is, most aren't.
Yeah.
Like if you look at all these groups, like there's tons of groups on Facebook and everywhere. You look at all these groups, it's that same people.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a 6 to 8 core people, and that's just it. On all these nonprofits, I mean, you see the same faces all the time, and that's what I don't want us to be. Yeah. That's why I want it to be like where we have you're going to be my co-host. I'll be here, and let's talk about that. You're the program director, and you give me eyes. You work on editing, talk about production, talk about all that. But that's what we're trying to do. We want everybody's voice here. Everybody that has an organization there. You got a veteran business network, and you're like, oh no, we're competition. No, come here. I'll promote you. Because I'm not trying to be the only one in town. I like the idea that we have veteran networks, business networks. We got to connect together. If one ends up being bigger than the other, swallow us up. That's okay, cool. As long as we have the same mission. I just don't want to. I have a clear vision, though. So that's kind of why I want to lead the way, because I kind of have a clear vision of what I want us to be. I kind of explained it, and especially with the Warfighter Sanctuary as well. So we have follow-on missions. Not just that, but talk a little bit about you being the program director and production editing.
Yeah, well, one thing I did want to say about that is that just being part of that community and connecting with it, a part that I'd kind of put to rest, because I just assumed that it wasn't a big deal having served. It was just something you do, and that was really I was really selling myself short in the long run, just in general in life, and just being part of that again, and being around like-minded people and people that have shared that experience, and that laugh at those types of jokes that we all know that most people look at and go like, what? Yeah. That's been great. And now having an active role with having had an active role with VETRENET here for a while, and using skills that I've learned, to kind of came up with the title program director, which I think encompasses a lot of things. Mm-hmm. It's taking the skills I learned as a musician to put on events and set up for events, and technical, stuff with running sound.
Running a podcast, like this podcast. I have no idea what we're doing. You figured it out. I'm learning.
You can see where hands are flying everywhere, hitting lights and microphones and stuff. We haven't figured out our space yet, but again, just previous to the podcast, started working with podcasts. I've been doing an online performance series with my vocal coach, where we, do video of her and some of her students performing, and I'll perform, guitar backing tracks a lot of time, and I do the sound production and the video editing, and it's an honor to be able to, and just so rewarding to be able to use things that I've learned over the years to do something that I think is worthy and impactful, and not just anonymous veterans, but even veterans, you, my good friend, Danny and Elaine and Raul, something positive that just we can all really stand up and be proud of, and just give us a whole new outlook on life, and just boost our community. That at the end of the day, that's really what it's about. So yeah, that's just been a lot of fun doing that, and diving in, learning new programs, learning new things, having to learn new software for video editing, and it's pretty amazing, and I think that resonates with the mission, because sometimes it's about trying new things, and we want people to be successful financially in business, and we want their families to be stable, and all these things. But if there's other little pieces of their life that's missing, whether it's fitness, or whether it's jiu-jitsu, or they studied taekwondo when they were younger, or kickboxing, or whatever it may be, and obviously I mentioned music. If you played at one point and you just missed that piece in your life, or various other things, I think if we can fill in those little broken pieces that we lost in life sometimes, not just because of something traumatic, but just because life got in the way, and support each other as veterans that way. That's also pretty amazing.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so I think that's good for our first episode. A good introduction into Warfighter Sanctuary. How do I end this? What do I do with my hands? I don't know. I guess we'll end it by saying thank you for joining us. We look forward to having you in our first episode. This will consider episode 0.
Exactly.
This is episode 0 where we just talk about a little bit of the background. We already told you the format. Our first episode is going to be where we interview a veteran-owned and operated business, and then we're going to have a discussion. So it'll be Juan Ocampo will be our first guest on our first episode, and then we'll have our after where we discuss. Actually, Juan is not in the afterwards, just a little segment because he just had to run for his business, but that's part of the reality of it. And we'll take it from there, folks. So this is André Rivera and Justin Martin.
Peace out.
Wishing you a great and glorious day, and we will see you soon on our next episode next week. Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
That wraps up another episode of Warfighter Sanctuary. Thank you for listening. For more information on VETRENET and the businesses featured in this podcast, be sure to check out our website at VETRENET.com. That's www.Victor Echo Tango, Romeo Echo, November Echo Tango.com. Become a Patreon subscriber and get VIP access to the Blue Falcon Show, where we continue the interview with their unfiltered thoughts on a range of topics. Some serious, some trivial, always entertaining. Like and follow our Facebook page to join the community at facebook.com/groups/VETRENET. Intro music provided by Army veteran Sabo of NSA Entertainment. Post-show music provided by Marine veteran Justin Martin of JLM Entertainment. Voiceover provided by Marine veteran Mark Denstead of voicedbymark.com. Until next time, remember, hiring a veteran is thanking a veteran. Thank you for your support.